to be here. There's nothing like live streaming to keep you on your toes. Had some last minute shuffling, but really put together a really quality team to start this week. I'm so honored again to have Ford Saeks with us, and also Carl Dakin, who's a regular every week or every other week with us, seems like every week. And the focus today is going to be on business growth because I know that's Ford's specialty. So with that said, Ford, why don't you introduce yourself and we'll get the show going.
Well, thanks so much, Don and Carl. So, a lot of organizations come to me because they want to make more money. They want to take care of the customer, expand the customer experience. And when I first started as an entrepreneur, decades ago, I really became skilled at connecting value propositions to target markets. So I promoted myself as a marketing person, but then I realized that marketing was the feature and the benefit was business growth. So thank you for having me on the show today around business growth. And to start the day, I would say, regardless of where you are, whether you work for a company, whether you own a company or an entrepreneur or just, kicking tires, there's only really 4 ways to grow a business. And so I just want to lay that as a foundation, and then that'll start our discussion. Number 1, get more high value customers. We don't want more customers. We want high value customers. Number 2, we want to increase the average transaction, but that means add more value. So how can you add more value and increase the average transaction? Number 3, how do you get repeat or referral sales? Maybe you're selling something that isn't something they're going to repeat, but maybe it's a referral. So how do you create a referral culture that helps you get more business? And number 4, how do you improve operational performance using technology, using digital, using AI, using your team, creating a culture of competency? So whether it's on the marketing and sales side or the operational side, growing a business, whether you're new or whether you're an 8 or 9 figure or 10 figure client, that's the foundation. So I'm glad to be here to discuss anything that you guys have to come in. You can throw me any tough ball questions. I'm just happy to be on your show.
Well, no happier than I am to have you on the show. And with that said, as a special compliment to what we were just saying, we are welcoming Carl Dakin here, who has been in the financial markets for the majority of his career and was just fortunate to come back from Belize, taking a group of students. Carl's an adjunct professor at Denver University and Colorado State University. So Carl, welcome back. First thoughts on business growth and a little bit about your Belize adventure.
Sure, Don. Thanks for inviting me to be on the show today with Ford. With Ford going through those 4 points, I almost feel like I should just sit and suck up information rather than contribute anything this morning, because everything you're saying, Ford, applies to me personally within what I'm doing within my own consulting practice and trying to grow it up and be what it can be. And part of my focus, as you did in point 1, is I'm focusing on helping small businesses who are intending to grow, who need to grow, and now need to find funding to support that growth. And they often are having to go through their own challenges and transformation in order to enable the growth, changing out founders or adding new people, new infrastructure, everything you're talking about. It all costs money. And so now they find themselves in a situation where they need to go out beyond friends and family, whoever they got their first funding from, and they need to find new money from people they probably don't know, and they need to do a better job of positioning themselves and telling their stories to those people in order to obtain that funding. So that's all good. And as Don asked, I am an adjunct professor at the University of Denver, and I created a course called International Financial Transactions to give me an excuse to go to the country of Belize. And we just got back late Saturday night after a week-long trip where we took 10 MBA students and immersed them in doing business from the country of Belize so they could get a different look at the world, kind of a depth perception of doing business in the US versus another country where they have different cultures, taxes, property, ownership, all kinds of different things, which are different but the same. And having that additional depth gives them an ability to be better business people, to make better career choices. A number of them were so happy with the country that I thought they were going to stay, but they came home anyway. And so we're now looking at doing some long form courses, maybe doing some recurring student project courses down there to give them just that additional look, get more than their toes in the water, get maybe waist deep into the water, and do some business down there. So we met with a local port authority, a coconut grower, a couple developers, the local energy company, the only oil gas company in Belize, and talked with so many people and got their views on the world. And it was interesting to see how taking care of your employees was a central theme to all these businesses who are succeeding. So a rapid trip, a lot of depth, and I'm still sorting out unpacking this morning.
Well, sounds great. Looks like one thing it illustrates is how busy we all are, but also how we're evolving in our ability to grow and impact others. And I think that's pretty essential in going forward and growing businesses. So a little bit of background, Ford. How did you arrive at business growth as a primary area that you're focusing on?
Well, it comes down to anything, having invented products and sold millions of dollars worth of products. That's not all profit, by the way. I just want to be very clear. I know that, when you're starting, you're talking about, you should just sit back and soak up the details. What I would tell you is the more I've learned over the years, the more I know I don't know. So while I'm very opinionated and I feel like I have a lot of experience, I'm also a critical thinker and open-minded. So I hope your listeners today take that away as a takeaway that, yes, you can listen to experts and listen to podcasts and be on LinkedIn Live and YouTube Live and a few other places, but you still have to be open-minded and critical thinking. The biggest thing is don't take what somebody says and say it won't work if you haven't actually tried it, because the experts usually have the experience. As far as how I got started when I was 15 years old. I started a painting company, and I grew the company up to 3 crews, and the average age was 40 years old, because painters liked to do 2 things. They like to paint and drink. And so if I got the jobs and kept them busy, then they were happy. And so they got 60% of the job. I took 40%. Sometimes it would be 35, and sometimes they gave them more. And I went out and sold the painting jobs. So door to door, knocking on doors, and did the old grassroots marketing to build it up. And that first year in business, I generated $35,000 in sales, which doesn't sound like a lot now, but it's about $300,000 in today's equivalents as far as sales are concerned. Now, of course, I didn't have insurance. I didn't pay taxes. I didn't know what I was doing. Not something I would suggest when you start a business. But this was 1976, so it was a lot different time back then. So I built that first business up, and from that time, I've invented products and sold products and created a company and built a sporting goods company up to 140 employees, and was selling through Sky Mall and Sharper Image and Williams Sonoma and Performance Bicycle, and through a lot of other 4,000 dealers across the United States. I was selling to Walmart, and at that time Kmart and Sam's Clubs. And so I built a company up. And so after I did that and invented a few other products, I created a think tank, Don. And so people would come to me with their ideas, and they'd say, hey, I've got an idea for this business. And so I would strategically help them with a business plan, help them understand how to grow and scale, how to find a customer. And I always came back to that. What are you selling that people will pay to make go away? Like, what's the pain or what's the pleasure? And I really kept it really basic. I did at the time, I went and took a couple college courses because I only had a 9th grade education, and I had to pre-test to get into the college so I could take some courses on economics and accounting and English. So those are the 3 courses I took. And on the economics and business class, the teacher came to me after the second week and said, or the professor said, can I just give you an A if you don't come back? And I said, what do you mean? He goes, well, you're contradicting everything I'm saying. I said, that's because what you're telling them is not correct. Like they were trying to talk about gross profit and markup, and he did the formula wrong. I said, no, you have to mark something up 100% to make a 50% gross profit. You're telling these students the wrong information. So I'm sorry, but that's not correct. I'm just fixing my little earpiece here. So Anyway, I got into it because I had the experience in the field. Then people started asking me, how did you do that? How did you do that? That led to consulting, that led to speaking. And now I'm a Hall of Fame speaker, one of only 200 that are alive in the United States, in a group that, had like Zig Ziglar and other people in it. So I'm very honored to be able to be in that elite group of Hall of Fame keynote speakers. And so now I have an agency and I go and I help people bridge that gap between their value proposition and their customer.
Well, it seems like education might not have served you as well as self-education,
Well, you're going to pay your tuition either way, right? So I think if I would have had the proper education, it would have saved. So I'm not bashing higher education. I now have a degree from High Point University. I'm very proud of it. I now can say I'm a college graduate. But at the time, I was learning from the School of Hard Knocks. And for those of you listening, look, you can either learn from your experience or other people's experience. One of the great things about this podcast that you put on, this live show that you go live so many times a week, is you're delivering nuggets of wisdom for your listeners. And so the real value is you don't have to do everything that we say, but take away a couple key points, and that'll help you in whatever you're doing in life.
Well, that's so important. And the reason I say that is you did everything you did without the benefit of AI, without the benefit of collaborative live streaming, without the benefit of a LinkedIn platform where you could really cut through, accelerate, and try so many things and get the benefit and value of the experience and insights of other people, that you can really get an accelerated degree. Carl, I know you're a lifelong learner, and I know you've had to have your ups and downs. What was a defining moment in your career or process to direct you where you are now?
If we use defining moments as the metric, I'm more of a pinball machine kind of reaction here, where I seem to bounce off all kinds of things through my career, where you get a better look, a better adjustment to what reality is all about. You hear so much about entrepreneurship, and I've worked with a lot of entrepreneur support groups, and they will give you a 100,000-foot view, which is barely enough just to make you aware of what the situation is. And then you have to adapt it to where you are, who you are, what you want to do. And sometimes that's a very difficult, if not almost impossible task to bring it down to a level of detail. And a lot of times you will go the wrong direction. You'll apply the information incorrectly, or you'll find out that your lifelong learning just got started and it will never end for a long, long time. So I would point to a couple of things. I'll give one example. I was out of law school. I was doing private practice, working with small businesses, and I was contemplating going back to get a PhD in something, just to bolster my resume, because I wasn't really clear where I was going, what I was going to do. And I was reviewing different universities when I got a call from a friend of mine. He says, University of Denver has a class and we think that you should teach it. And it was legal aspects of information management in their graduate school of librarianship. And so I went over and talked to them. They go, yeah, you'd be perfect to teach this class. And I go, why? And they go, we can't find anybody else who knows what we're talking about in this class. So I found myself going, well, if I'm going to teach graduate students, I don't need a PhD. I'm already far enough down the road. I'm ahead of the curve. I'm one of those people who's ahead of the bleeding edge instead of behind it when innovation comes about. And it just contributed my ongoing career, where I moved from working with software to hardware and computers, anything new under the sun, which led me to 40 plus years of dealing with all kinds of innovation, all kinds of industries. And along the way, I joke, I got the short straw in every project. I was the one who had to go out and find the money for the project. And so I kind of developed my own approach, which was beaten into me by reality rather than me being a quick learner. I kept thinking that people with money were smart. They would choose me over somebody else. Anyone with money was an investor, on and on and on. All these urban myths that are not true. And it takes time when everybody says, no, this is the way it works. And then you find out, no, it won't. And so you're thinking, I must fix myself in order to go out and overcome whatever I'm doing wrong, only to find out that generally everybody was doing it wrong. And you've got to come back and rethink your business as your product. And what you're doing in your business are the features that are the compelling selling points for your investors. And at that point, most people don't care about what you're doing. They're not going to invest. So then you need to focus on who cares and likes what you're doing and who values what you're doing, because they have a greater value alignment and they become a higher probable investor candidate for you to chase. And then you just are ready to get started. It's not the end of the story. So yeah, lots of defining moments. I was on Ford. I was on a call with Don a number of weeks ago, and the other guest says, "Well, you have to have at least 6 business failures before you can succeed." So I started immediately counting to see if I had my 6 already behind me, so I can move on now to success.
Well, I think this is so important and valuable, especially with people making transitions to what we're talking about or starting out for the first time. And in today's rapidly changing marketplace, especially as far as innovation and technology, it's even faster than it was before. And it actually takes that whole concept of it's never been done, you can't do it, because times and conditions are changing that maybe make that happen. I think another important variable that I look forward to talk about is people do business with people, and how do you develop that personality or that presence that makes you attractive and interesting enough for people to fully hear what you're saying.
All right. I have a question. So we are live right now, everybody. And so for the purposes of this is for information and educational purposes only. If you love the episode, thank Harvey. If you hate it, come give me the hate mail. Don't troll him. All right. So just want to make sure we get that out of the way real quick. All right. So I'm going to do a mini hot seat, and we're going to answer this question this way. So Carl, you and I haven't met, right? So tell me, I'm going to use you as a hot seat. And we're putting Carl on the spot. This is not pre-planned. So tell me about your business. How do you make money now, Carl? So you're speaking you're a professor at Denver, but are you doing business coaching, or what else are you doing?
Yeah, my primary business is consulting with small businesses, helping them design, stage, and operate their capital campaigns.
Okay.
So
a couple questions. I got that. I'm going to interrupt you a lot just so you know I'm doing that.
That's
All
fine.
right. So what's your product pyramid look like from low fee to high fee? So like, can they get something for free? And what's the most expensive thing? Hypothetically, we're talking hypothetically, but just so, do you have any free downloads or free webinars that people can watch?
Yeah, I do a daily newsletter on LinkedIn called Instant Funding. And then I'm doing my own LinkedIn live show now on Tuesday with Don's support and coaching on successful funding. I've done podcasts. I do guest appearances.
All right.
That's
So I'm
on
going to go to the
low
next
end.
level.
Feel
So
free.
now the next level, so I'm going to do this. I'm going to interrupt a few times, but
Yeah.
just so you know, I'm doing it. Do you have a book?
I've had a couple books in the past. I have 2 that are pending, getting back to work.
So here's what I'd recommend. Get your book done. Go to AI, write the manuscript, go to Fiverr or go on Upwork, find someone that can lay it out in InDesign, go get an Ingram Spark account, get the cover. I mean, we've published books in 3 days. Like, we just published a book. We've published over 300 books for clients. Takes about 3 days if you do it right, from a manuscript to editing to a full book that then gets connected. So if you load your book on Ingram Spark, it automatically connects to 60 booksellers. Okay, so that gives you your social proof, self-publish your own book and do that. And again, the 7 keys every business needs to know about financing, and then you can decide what that is. So let's go up from the book. So if a business finds out they watch you on LinkedIn Live and now they're interested in they've seen you on your Tuesday show and they reach out and they say, "Hey, Carl, I'd love to find out how to work together." What's your next step in the journey? Do you have a call with them, or what do you do?
In fact, I was just scheduling before the show. I typically will take a half-hour call where I discuss with them what their capital needs are, where they're at, and whether I can be of any help to them. And I will be very diligent in either pointing them forward, where I can give them some consulting services, or I'm going to turn them to another source or send them back to the blackboard because they're not ready.
Okay, so I'm going to recommend that call be 15 minutes, not 30. And I'm going to recommend that if you, in the first 15, you realize that you got a hot prospect, then you say to the prospect, you know, I think I could really help. Do you have another 15 minutes? But don't schedule 30 minutes, because if you schedule 30 minutes and they're a dog that won't hunt, you need to get off the damn call and not spend the time for 30-minute slot. So your time is valuable. You're an expert. 15 minutes is the most. Okay, let's go from that. So now let's say you've identified a prospect and they've said yes, and you think you can help them. Do you have pre-packaged pricing, or how do you price your product? We're talking hypothetically. So if you're listening now and you're one of Carl's clients, just let it go. We're talking something different here. Okay. So what do you normally charge?
I do have an hourly rate. If they want to just do it by the hour until they figure out where they're at, I charge $2.95 for that.
Okay. So I'm going to say this now, Carl, keep in mind, you and I have now worked together. No hourly rate. Okay. No hourly rate. They can get the first hour, which should be a minimum of $500. You're a smart guy. You've been doing this a long time. You've paid your dues. You know how to do it. They want to get you on the phone. It's $500 for the first hour. So you do the 15 minutes for free. And then if you find a hot prospect, you say, look, you know, we want to diagnose before we prescribe. I think we should have a conversation. It's $500. It's 100% guaranteed. If at the end of that hour, you don't feel like I've given you some value, but charge the $500, because you need to establish the value. It's the value you're offering. No hourly fees, because you're not a commodity and you don't want to be compared to somebody else's fees. And you also don't want them watching the clock. You want them focused on what you're doing. So you can decide to use this or not, but this is just an example of business growth. Okay. So let's say it's $500. You got them on the call, and now you've determined that they need more time. Do you have preset packages, or do you just customize it based on the client?
I have to customize it pretty much, because the different capital campaigns run from very small to very large. The larger ones, we try to do a flat fee for part of it, and equity or some other form of participation. So I have a part in the upside.
Right. So a flat fee plus a percentage of like I did. I've done that where I'll say, look, I'll do a business plan. It'll be $10,000 or $25,000. Plus I want 2% of anything that I help you earn if I'm going out and helping them get capital. So that's good. You've got a plan there. All right. What's the most expensive contract that you've done? What's the biggest one-time contract?
50,000 front end, 50,000 back end.
Okay. So that's a decent amount. That's good. So you've got a business model now. So now we're going to go to phase 2. So what you need to have, I'm going to give the 5 things for your listeners, and don't worry, Harvey, I'll let you get back to running your show here. What's that?
It's Don.
Don, I'm sorry. I don't know why I said Harvey. Harvey Tuck's another one I was on. Sorry, Don. So I know, but usually the names are up in front of me in the Zoom or in the live stream. So apologize to all those listeners out there. I know who he is. It's my fault. I'll just take it as a senior moment. Okay, Don. Well, it's okay. You said Ford Saeks, so we're even. Yeah. Okay, but I do appreciate being on your show again. All right, so I'm going to continue for just a second here. So, Carl, the 5 things to grow your business are your area of expertise. You've got that. You're a smart. You're number 2. You've got to have a revenue model. We just talked about it. I recommend a 15-minute call, then a custom package, and you can go from there. And you need to have things at free and low levels. The books and things are social proof and leaders to get them into the call, right? And just like doing your LinkedIn Live, which is Don's helping you with your show, I think that's amazing because he's an expert. And there's nobody I know, and I've done lots of LinkedIn. There's no one I know who's done what he's done on LinkedIn, which is why anytime he asks, I'm like, yeah, I'll do your show, right? Okay, so you've got to have your expertise. You've got to have a revenue model. You have to be skilled at delivering the content, which is what I think I might have just cut out. Am I still here?
Yeah, you're doing great.
Still here.
Okay, because my camera looks like it's not there, but I'm going to continue as long as you can hear me.
You're doing well. We can see you too.
Okay, so that's weird. On my screen, it went out, but it's okay. So you've got to have I'll do it slow and then I'll turn it back over to you. You've got to have your expertise. You have to have your revenue model. You have to be able to deliver the content through multiple mediums, whether it's speaking, training, coaching, consulting, learning management systems, LinkedIn Live, LinkedIn Learning, whatever the different courses are. And then number 4, you've got to have your digital footprint, which is your website, your social media, your search engine optimization, your business directory listings. And then number 5 is just taking consistent action to realize that you have to solve problems. And so there's a formula, which I'll share it if you have a question, but there's a formula which is identifying the problems and the consequences that your target market has, and then the solutions and the results. So when someone comes to me, I can say, well, you know how franchise organizations struggle with getting their franchisees to follow their systems and take personal accountability for their own results, which results in low profits for both you as a franchisor and the franchisee. So again, I don't talk about anything I'm talking about. I talk about the problem and the consequences. And then the solution is, well, what I do is blank, 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 as I help those people do that. So the key here really is to look at those 5 things and look at what area do I need to work on. Now, I haven't looked at your website. I haven't looked at those things, but I'll stop there, turn it back over to Don. But that's an example of like a hot seat of looking at someone's business and helping them scale it.
I think
Ford,
Carl, please.
yeah, Ford, I just want to thank you for that. And Don, I want to thank you again for letting me be on the show this morning so I can gain the value from Ford's comments. I agree with everything you're saying, and I think I'm on track for a good part of that. I think that part of what you were showing with the 15-minute and then doing a flat fee on the first hour is, as you say, is trying to establish value. Too often, people out there in the small business world, they get a lot of free information and they start developing an expectation that everybody's going to help them for free. Everybody's going to fund them because they're an entrepreneur. And reality just kind of reaches up and smacks them right between the eyes and says, no, that's not the way it works out there. In fact, if you're getting too much of this stuff for free, you better start checking the quality of what you're getting. Because there are some mentors who give invaluable help along the way. There's different accelerators, incubators, and government programs will give you information. But at some point, it's still not it's not customized. It's not personally fit to you for what you're doing. And at that point, you may need to get expert help, like I did when I reached out to Don. I've been podcasting for 6 months and not seen anything out of it. I've been posting articles on LinkedIn for 5 years and occasionally getting something out of it. And as soon as I started working with Don, everything started gelling. I had all the platform of LinkedIn. I had the analytics. I started getting people who I knew going way back in history going, oh, Carl, yeah, I remember you. Yeah. In fact, I got an email this morning from a guy that I've known for probably 20 years. And he goes, hey, I need some help. Let's get on the phone. So it was interesting to see how it opened doors within existing relationships, but at the same time, as of this morning, I have 723 subscribers to my newsletter since I started December 1st. And a lot of these are people I already know, but there are a lot of new people. And I want to use LinkedIn Live to build a community of people who support businesses because I realize I spend a lot of my time talking to an individual business and I get trapped into saying the same thing to try to get them up to speed. So one of the infrastructure things I'm working on is I'm training up a customized artificial intelligence that unfortunately I made it look like me, but now I'm getting it to talk like me. And I'm going to use it on my website to try to answer those first questions that everybody has as they try to figure out what I'm saying, where I'm coming from, and what they need to do to get ready. And then it kind of sets the table better for the consulting work that follows.
Yeah, yep. Go ahead, Don.
Well, what it demonstrates is, and especially in today's world, is time and cost efficiencies for all parties involved, right? And how you appear is really the beginning, hopefully, of a strong relationship. So again, to Ford's point, 15 minutes is enough to see you, say hello to you, and get the essence of what you have to say. And that puts the responsibility on the questioner or the potential client to show themselves in what they can do in 15 minutes, to give you an idea of what you're going to be getting into. And it gives you an opportunity to portray yourself as something that's justifiable. I think to Ford's point, when you put an hourly rate on anything, you know, you're a time person, right? You're trading time for money. You know, 3 hours will get you 3 times your rate. When you're an idea person or an innovative person, and you know, everybody here today knows that when you start with somebody, there's a lot to do with that person in order to get them up to speed, right? If you're just selling a commodity, a product, well, that's it. That's all there is. What's the value and what's the marketplace going to allow you to do? But if you can take somebody from A to B really quick, change their insight, their mindset, and all of a sudden their opportunity got a lot bigger, a lot wider, and a lot more sustainable. How do you place a value on that? And then there's the other aspect is, you know, people will come for the price, they'll come for the product, but eventually they'll stay for you, right? And what do you make them become better for because of your connection with them? And then relatively speaking, what's the end value, right? If they can generate $1 million more in revenue, how could you ever equate that to a price per hour model versus a participation model possibly? So, you know, I know you must have had to go through the rigors of trials and tribulations in order to reach the point you are, Ford. So what were the compelling areas to say, this just doesn't work as well as I thought it would, or there's a better way?
Well, along the way, you know, you talked earlier about education and learning from other people's experience, and you can either pay the tuition yourself in mistakes, or you can learn from other people's experience. And I'm a continual learner. I mean, I read a lot of books, I scan a lot of them, but I read them. I participate in a lot of events and masterminds. I'm an EO member, Entrepreneurs Organization member. So I work with other executives, CEOs of organizations once a week in my forum. So I spend the time surrounding myself with people that are a lot smarter than me. And, you know, even like on podcasts like this, like I have grown businesses up from the marketing side, but I've always been undercapitalized. I've always had just enough money to go bankrupt. I mean, I remember when I built my sporting goods company, I went to it and got an SBA loan for $175,000. And I thought, I'm rich. Oh my God. It was just enough for me to almost go bankrupt because I was undercapitalized and I was growing so quickly that I had to factor all my receivables in order to get cash flow. I mean, I lost a lot of money by not taking care of the financial side of the business. So I really learned the hard way on a lot of things. But Don, it really comes down to, you know, what you just talked about, transactional versus transformational. So when I talk to people about my coaching and someone says, hey, I'm interested in strategically working with you, Ford, and I'm more of a consultant than a coach, but although some people don't know the difference, but a consultant, I'm more strategic and give you the ideas. You're responsible for executing. A coach is going to like guide you along the way. I do both, but really I'm more of the idea guy that's going to say, okay, here are 3 answers of how you can help solve and bridge that gap between where you are. And so I tell clients, if they're asking how many hours they get with my package, that they're the wrong people, because if they're asking the wrong question, the answer doesn't matter.
Mm-hmm.
And so the question shouldn't be how many hours. It should be how quickly or what can I do to help solve these biggest challenges. So the 15 minutes for me is identifying their big goals. What have they tried in the past? Who have they hired in the past? Because I'm trying to get a feel for, are they coachable? Because even if they've got the money, if they're not coachable, I don't want them as a client.
Mm-hmm.
They become what I call a PITA client, and that's a pain in the butt client, right? So if they're a PITA, I don't want them because they're not going to listen to anything I say, and everything they're going to challenge me on everything, which I don't mind being challenged. But if they're not willing to be coachable, then I can tell that in 15 minutes, right? I know if they one up me on everything I say in the first 15 minutes, then I'm like, okay, probably not a good fit, which is hard to turn away business, especially when you're thinking, hey, you know, this would be a really great client. I know they've got the money, but I've learned in later years that sometimes it's better to walk away from business. I don't know about you guys, but that's where I have found.
Yeah, I agree a million% with that, because again, I've always mentioned people are like elevator buttons. Some take you up, some take you down. And how that impacts your direction, your mindset, and your innovative ability to work with somebody who isn't innovative, who is just looking for confirmation or validation, or just
Right.
wants you to stay within the pattern they have and optimize it a little. And, there is a point where money is a byproduct of what you do, not the reason for doing it. Right. And
Yes.
if I can't get smarter, better, happier, that's an essential element. I'm at a different point where I had my career, retired after 37 years ago, 7 years ago, and have built huge businesses, really bootstrapping, that generated over $500 million in sales. And I was one of the first companies ever to be invited on Walmart.com when they launched as a private marketplace, and had reached a level where I was working with really smart people at a really high level of doing business, which was always based on trust. You always had to have documentation just to identify the borders of everything. But at the end of the day, it was fairness, because it was long term. Hey, we worked this out for this reason, and then we ended up there. Well, now that it's Carl and me again, until Ford comes back. Carl, what do you think about this conversation that came out just out of the blue today?
Well, I was laughing this morning because I have this list that stretches across my desk of things I'm doing to get back up to speed and get fully re-engaged with everything I'm working on. And so when you gave me a shout out, about being available, I said, let's see, my calendar is already clear because I was trying to catch up. Sure, yeah, let's go do this. But being on the show with Ford, yeah, I feel like I'm in celebrity, on the red carpet now, watching the celebrity walk by. He's been there, done it all. He's at the peak of his career, and he's essentially giving advice to everyone. But here I am, 40 plus years in my career, and I still feel like I'm learning a lot this morning. And I'm going to be taking notes, going back to a lot of my stuff after we get off the show, and going, yeah, okay, Ford said to do this, and it makes a lot of sense. So I'm going to be making some changes to make myself more efficient. I got a couple new client prospects who want to talk to me, and we're going to be doing 15-minute phone calls because Ford said I should do that.
Well, I'd say like anything else. Sorry, I had technical difficulties, got kicked out. But here's what I would say: test it. As any good marketer would be, test, track, modify, and repeat. And I know you would do that anyway, but test. Get your best guess, do your education, and I'm talking about the market, not for you guys. And then test it and see what works, and then repeat what works, and don't do what doesn't work. So. Yeah, that's amazing. I'd love to see how it works for you in the future.
Well, yeah, and I'm going to implement some of this after we get off the show. But I did the same thing with Don. Don, was coaching me, letting me be a guest on his show. He says, "Well, maybe you should do a newsletter." So I thought about it almost 10 hours, and then I started one. Because I agree with you. You can't really know something till you try it. You can stare at it, you can look at it from outside, you're an observer, you're in the audience, but that's not anywhere near being the same thing as being in the middle of the storm or being on stage performing with the band. So I'm an early tester, adopter. Get in it, find out what I don't know, figure out what I need to know, and make continuous refinements from there. So I've made 3 or 4 changes in my newsletter. Don's been very helpful, mentoring me and giving more punch, and thinking, trying to get feedback all the time from everybody reading it. What's of value? What do you care about? I watch the analytics to see if I get a spike in interest, because you're never done. there's it's continuing improvement type of thing. And as I learn more, I try to implement that as quickly as possible. And I really like your comment about, a quick read on someone. My common biggest gripe is that I will have someone who thinks they know how to raise money by asking any wealthy person for money, and when I come back to them, I go, no, no, you need to really zero in on people who care about you, who get the benefit outside of the investment, maybe more or greater than within the investment. And if I find those people, they are all very willing to work towards figuring out who that is, how to craft their offer to match up with those investors. The other ones are kind of like magnets. You used your term. I call it magnets. It's like I pull them away from each other, and then they snap back to where they were thinking before. And I'm going, no, they missed out on everything we're talking about. There's no way to give value or add value to them, so you might as well move on, because you are just spinning your wheels, and time is short, and you can only help so many people during the day. So you've got to limit who you work with.
Well, one
Well,
thing go ahead, Don. I have a comment I want to add.
Is to comment on what Ford has said, is I can read the confidence level of the person saying it, right? Anybody can say interesting, intelligent, really cool stuff, but what's their confidence level? And what I love about the show and love about having Carl and especially Ford, and I talk about Todd DeWitt all the time, is they love to be in the moment and being challenged with something out of the blue and see how they can respond in front of a live audience and come back with something that has value. Anybody can say, I'm getting on a show in a week, I'm going to really line up all these wonderful points, these great stories that are always wowing people. But people want to know, hey, if I'm with you, who are you when I'm with you? Not what did you say, what did you do, but how fast can you turn something around for me? Because that's another time versus money situation, is someone who just doesn't come up with anything new. No different than a client. And it's like, hey, this person isn't changing. They say that they're learning. They say they're growing, but it's not reflective of their action activities. And they're not making me smarter from challenging me, right? They don't question things enough. They just accept or assume. And one day they're going to have to be on their own 2 feet, right? So how prepared am I making them? Plus, the smarter, the stronger, more successful they are, once they got a taste, they'll probably want a bigger portion next time, right? And it's easier to do more business with less players than less business with more players, because of the time to get oriented, the time to get to know and build those relationships. And, just like this audience turns into a community that eventually distills into a family, you can only get better if the people around you are getting better with you or ahead of you. And I'd rather run with the fastest than try to keep up with the slowest. And, again, at the end of the day, it is human potential. It is the ability to make yourself better by having other people, involved in what you're saying and do. Really quick, I don't want to be remiss. I always love to recognize the audience. Carrie's here and is happy to join us. Dennis, who's an everyday person. Gentleman's done 49 years here in Denver in the heating and air conditioning business, and anybody who can do 49 years has shown their ability to reinvent themselves and align with change. Beverly's here, had a little difficulty getting on. Beverly does every Tuesday, women's empowerment event. She's just a fantastic professional who I learned so much from. Khan, who is here just for a moment, and I can't say enough about Khan. Khan just finished his second book. He does international consulting on large scale. Don't estimate the value you bring to your audience. Carl, in your area, you are an expert, just like Ford is in his. And that's so important, is people who root other people on, who enjoy the success of others until their success comes or when their success comes. And I think the collaborative effort of support of both Carl and Con last minute, because I wasn't sure about the show, jumped on and said, sure, I'll do it. And, I know Carl, just as a point, a couple weeks ago had a show, and because of whatever reason, his guest couldn't show up, and I couldn't see doing an hour by myself. I don't have an hour by myself I could do to make myself push forward. It's like eating a whole buffet in one bite. So Ford, what I love about what we're doing here today is you can always tell on people's faces when they're smiling genuinely, when they're involved in it. And to Carl's point, I had actually come up because I was doing 20, 30 minutes. I said, no, I'm going to do 15 because it gets us right to the point. Plus, everybody knows it's 15. How do you use that 15? And if the 15 is good, well, then you can talk about extending the time another time, or at least getting right into it. So Ford, back to you.
So a couple of things. One, you made a comment about, there's an old saying that says it's easier to run with 1,000 people in one direction than it is with one tied around your ankle. Right. So that's it. Number two, you talked about, back when we started the show today, we talked about the 4 ways to grow a business. And I said, look, it's not more customers or clients, it's higher value clients. And so, you need to know, what does it cost you to reach a client? What's your conversion rate? What's your profit on the first sale? But more importantly, what's the long-term value? And that lifetime value or long-term value is so essential when you look at business growth. I work with businesses a lot of times where they're highly successful, they're very profitable, but profit hides a lot of mistakes. So if there's one thing I've learned in business is that, just because you're making money doesn't mean you're doing it effectively. You could be wasting money. When I had that sporting goods company and I had 140 employees and all those things, I remember my first year, I made $1 million in revenue, and I was all excited, guys. I was all excited, kid from the projects, 9th grade education, I'm a millionaire. And I went to my controller, my accountant at the time, and she said, hold on there, Skippy. And I said, what are you saying? She said, well, you sold $1 million, you're $150,000 in debt, and you took home as a salary $15,000. Now I'm not it's not about money for those of you listening to the show or where you are around the world. I'm just saying that was not successful. And so that's when I went back, and going back, Carl, that's where I went back to college to figure out, okay, what's a chart of accounts? What's an income statement? What's a balance sheet? What's the ratios that I need to pay? And none of that. I knew none of that. All I knew is how to sell, right? I knew how to find a customer and how to deliver value. So it really took that wake up call of, okay, it doesn't matter what I make, it's what do I keep? And, in my sporting goods company, my best year was, I think, $10 million in 1 year, which is, for me, was a lot of money, for growing a company up from a napkin. And, I remember that I was still only about 8% net profit after taxes, which is not bad, and I was making a good salary because that was wrapped into it. But, now with my speaking business, I don't have as much top line revenue, but I'm way more profitable. My consulting business is more profitable. So, it's not, it also, I'm happier, right? Because, I don't have to manage the hungry mouths as much as I used to. Now I still have a digital agency and I still have real employees and I make payroll every 2 weeks and the same thing. But, you have to find what you're good at. And I found that I was really, you're either good at marketing or sales, or you're good at operations, leadership, accounting, and finance, or you're good at the customer experience. You just love people and you love taking care of that journey, but never are you all good at all three. And so for those of you listeners, you need to figure out where's your strength, hire your weaknesses. So I have a good controller, I have a good accountant, I have a good operations manager, a good operations director. So they can actually get things done, because it doesn't matter if you have the ideas, squirrel, it doesn't matter if you get anything done. It's how well are you actually, how effective are you? And for me, I would rather have people that are effective versus efficient. Efficient people follow the rules. They do exactly what they're told to do, but they sometimes lack the common sense to apply it to the situation. And sometimes the policies don't work. I'm not saying if you work for a company not to follow your systems. I'm just saying that you have to look at what's effective versus efficient.
Well, one thing I want to add before we close in about 10 minutes is I want to have Ford share his podcast live stream and events. I was lucky enough to participate in one and looking forward to when that goes live. So Ford, why don't you share with the audience how they can interact with you more on the level that you're at and opportunities for them.
Certainly. So I go live Wednesdays at 11 a.m. Central on Facebook, LinkedIn, and YouTube. So you can subscribe on your favorite streaming platform. And also the audio track becomes the Business Growth Show podcast. And Don's been a featured guest before. And Carl, I'd love to have you on. I'll send you details we can talk about finance and raising money and because most companies are undercapitalized and because they don't know what they don't know, right? And so I go live Wednesdays at 11 a.m. Central. And just like you, I'm more interested in quality listeners than quantity. So I don't have millions. I don't have millions of subscribers to my newsletter and to my episodes, but I have the right people. I have a lot of C-level executives, business owners, private equity groups, companies that are really interested in my topic, which is around business growth. So we talk about leadership, marketing. We talk a lot about AI right now because that's impacting every organization, even like you trying to create your little AI bot for you. And but I appreciate you allowing me to do that plug. So it's the Business Growth Show or Fortify, and just connect with me on LinkedIn. If you're listening to this show right now, my name is Ford, Ford, last name Saeks. It's part of the show notes. You can see it. And connect with me on LinkedIn. I'll be happy to accept the connection. Just put in a note, heard you on Don's show, so I know that you're not just trying to sell me something.
Well, that's great. What I love so much, and I've done 700 of these in 2 years, is the generosity, the quality of the individuals that I've had a chance to meet and continue to grow with. Because just like you mentioned, you're looking for more relevancy than just population, right?
Correct.
You'd rather have 20 strong, solid, aligned individuals as opposed to 200 or just having a party around you. And the other element is learning from others as you're working together with others. So in other words, most people are, I'm the coach or the consultant, you're the client, and there's always going to be that dynamic versus peer to peer, learning from each other. Because as you look at someone, even a nuance as to how they respond to something before they get verbal, right? How they project. And those are things everybody could pick a little bit of and add to it. And if you do 700 of these, you're actually part of a mosaic, because I've learned so much from Carl and Con and Beverly in so many ways that you slowly optimize little parts of you that you're not even aware are starting to project out there, and makes you a much stronger person when you do go out and try to engage a client, an opportunity. I do believe when you feel like you have no ceiling, that opportunities are unlimited. It's really about how do you balance them? How do you engage in them? Because I think another challenge people have, just because you're good at something and you like doing it, it's not always the proper thing at the proper time to do it. Being able to exclude things. So again, you're more relevant, you're more aligned, and you can prosper in so many ways. And especially when you bring more value than anybody invested in, including yourself, where 1 and 1 turns into 11. So I know we're coming up to the tail end. Carl, this has been a fast and furious run through of you can't get enough. Honestly, I gotta say that. Carl?
No, this has been fun. Invite me back again. I think it's, the going back to your original comment, Ford, is that I'm trying to zero in on what I have fun doing, which I think is taking on challenges of raising funding that have never been done before. So there is no rule book. And so I let a little bit of my creative streak run wild, going, maybe I can fit a solution together on that. And for the right customer, the right client, I'm exactly the answer that they're looking for. I'm going to be part of that. And then it's kind of takes on an adventure story thing where I'm looking for a wizard, I'm looking for a thief, I'm trying to build a team of people, who can go with me on this adventure, and we'll go out and solve this problem together for a client who has all the ability to grow if we can just put the right solution together. And that's where I have the most fun, and that's where the most reward is for me. And getting paid is necessary, but it is secondary to having the fun of, oh yeah, look what we just did.
Well, and one thing before I turn it right back to Ford, and I think Ford had made this point, I know Todd has, is how can anybody get the value of what we bring in 1 hour from everything we've said? That's incredible, right? Just spending an hour with Ford, and hopefully Ford spends an hour with me, and the same thing with Carl, is the access to it and the unadulterated pureness of it, right? It hasn't had a chance to get filtered. It's like you said something, I'm responding. It's almost like knee jerk. If you gave me 5 minutes, I can be more intelligent. But, I wouldn't be as authentic. I wouldn't be as in the moment. And I think that's what people really want to know is if everything goes well, there's not much you need to work on. But when the ship falls over on this side and you got to get it straightened out again, where are you? What are you? And then also that empathy that's so important when you're working with somebody, right? That, hey, it's going to be okay. We can make it happen. It's just going to take a little longer, or we're going to have to shift a little bit. That's what people spend money for, is the ability to say, well, they if they don't know it, they'll figure it out with me or for me. And that gives me more confidence. So coming up on top of the hour, I'll have Carl say final words and then turn it over to Ford and get everybody on their busy way today. Carl?
Again, thank you, Don, for being on let me be on the show this morning. My primary purpose in working with Don was to build a community of people who are also supporting businesses and growth. And this show has once again proven that this was a step in the right direction. This was a good decision for me. And I appreciate the opportunity to be with you here today, Don and Ford. Thank you for all of your good advice. And I was writing down notes so I can get in and see your show here on Wednesday.
Well, great, Carl. Ford?
Well, first of all, Carl, thank you for jumping on and saving Don from having a heart attack of a guest not showing up. So I know, full disclosure, everybody, I'm going back to back. And my team said, you're supposed to be on a show right now. And I clicked the link and I'm like, oh, crap. So, I'm back to back. I'm very busy. I'm very scheduled, but I'm honored to be able to be here today. Things happen for a reason. Carl, thanks. I got a new friend. I know some things, and now I've got a resource I can use for my clients. And Don, you're the ultimate connector of people, and you're really just delivering such great value. And I would say this in closing: you can't drink from an empty well. If you want to make more money, you have to add more value. So you need to look at your life and what areas of your life do you need to improve your learning in? Is it in leadership, finance, accounting, marketing, sales, team building, whatever area? Maybe you're a parent. Is it parenting? Whatever modality it is, there's no shortage of resources out there on the planet right now. There's no excuses with TikTok, Facebook, LinkedIn, Instagram, Snapchat, TikTok. There's no excuses, but you have to find the right people. And this show definitely has the right people and the right guests. Make sure you subscribe. Make sure you show up. And again, you can listen to the background. And if it's a topic you really like, then make sure you get engaged with the chat, like a lot of the people that have done that. So thank you for those of you that were in the chat engaged. And I can't, as a panelist, I can't answer anything in the chat. So that was good. But Don, back to you. Thank you so much for having me as a guest. Like I said, you need me again, just let me know. I'll just make sure I come in early.
You're definitely on future shows and schedules. What I love about both Carl and Ford, and I sincerely say this, they are also so humble, and they all learned as they went, right? This was not something that was handed down to them and they just felt entitled. and they are accessible, and they do a lot of good, in so many ways for so many people, and we'll never know what the benefit of the audience received today, even if it's just let's do 15 minutes instead of 30. We will for sure never get to know, meet, and learn from people who will see this show for years after this. And I think that's really the key to what we were talking about, efficiency and effectiveness, is getting residual value, continual value from efforts you do today. And I think that's how someone can really benefit for others as well as themselves. And every learning experience is a growing experience that allows you to be better the next time you come on. So thank you, Carl. Thank you, Ford. It was tremendous. Thank you, Con, for being as generous as you were today also. Tip my hat to everybody. And with that said, we'll see you tomorrow at Beverly Women's Empowerment event. We actually, I'll tell you, we've got a young lady who's 18 years old. Her name is Imogen Eyre. She's in England. She just did a post on LinkedIn, got 90,000 views on her post that said, why I'm not going to medical school now. She's focused on helping other people in that area. She's done 100 podcasts already. And
Wow.
she's a sponsor. She went to a convention in Malta. Actually, I had her dad on. You might know him, Ford. He's in franchising, Kevin Ayers. And he was a tremendous guest. So, everything comes from something and then moves to all kinds of different ways. Con just says, last comment, thanks all for another great show. Thank you. And I can't thank you enough, so we'll have to do it again to keep the thank yous going. With that said, thank you, Con. And thank you, Carl, and thank you, Ford. Thank you, audience. Talk again. Bye.